Welcome to Tab Talks, where I believe that talking is healing and listening is feeling. This is my first ever podcast. Creating my first ever podcast called Tab Talks. Talking is healing, right? Talking is healing. I believe that through talking, because I love to talk a lot, that I actually gain some healings from sharing information, especially with my mates. So that's basically why I created this podcast. I want to talk with my friends about their journeys, the things they've learned, tell some stories about our life, and just hopefully it might resonate with anyone listening out there. Because as much as talking is healing, so is listening. So here we go. Today we have got Cjay.
Hello.
aka Chris. And again, I believe that talking to my friends is where some of my most healing conversations have happened. At the end of the day, talking is healing. So today we're going to talk about quite an in-depth topic, self-discovery, right? And finding out where you belong in this world and who you are. We've known each other for what? Over 10 years now.
Yeah.
And we've known each different version of each other, actually.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool. So do you want to start a little bit at the beginning and tell us a little bit about growing up and how you felt in your family, and explain a little bit about the situation?
Well, one thing that I've been speaking to my therapist about recently is the whole belonging thing. Because growing up, obviously everyone kind of has an identity, mainly from their parents and siblings and the school you go to and stuff. But obviously, I remember being younger and being obsessed with the way people looked like their parents or their siblings. So obsessed with it. So all my friends at school, when I'd see their parents at the school gates, I'd be like, oh my God, they look
like their parents.
I didn't look like my parents.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So basically, because I was adopted and my mother had told a few lies about the father, the Adoption Society had placed this black woman who was having a black baby from a black man with a black couple.
So just to be clear, your biological mum...
Correct.
...had said a little bit of a lie about your biological dad being black.
Yes. So on the birth certificate, what I was due to come out as, the bun in the oven,
the little bun,
is a little black bun. And at the same time, my adoptive parents were looking for a child, and they're both black. So then the Adoption Society was like, perfect, here's a match. Black baby, black couple, black baby.
Everyone's happy. Except the little bun.
The bun wasn't black.
A lovely little caramel bun came out.
A caramel bun came out, and my adoptive mother actually took me back to the Adoption Society and said, I don't know if this baby's black, I think this baby's mixed race. And the Adoption Society said, oh, well, no, on the records he's black, so it must just be, it can be from his grandparents, or it skips a generation, or
it's going to change,
or he might get darker, or, I mean, this was the 80s, so...
It was acceptable in the 80s, right?
Yeah, things are a little bit different now. And so, of course, then I was basic, and I'm quite light-skinned as well for, on the mixed race scale. I think I have a lot of my Caucasian father's features.
Yes.
So, in the 80s, this kind of... I had jaundice as well, so I was yellowish. Jaundice baby with a black couple was obviously like, huh?
And you also had a black adopted sister, right?
Yeah. So then my sister came, they adopted her, and she's black as well. So then it was the three of them and me, very pale, mixed race boy. So even, just walking down the street, there was nowhere to hide, because... Walking down the street, you would look at us and you instantly could see or question. There was a lot of questions. And
were you aware from a young age that you were adopted and this was a possibility, or were you unaware of that?
I was aware that I was adopted from as far as I can remember.
Yeah, so that's great. At least you were aware of the full situation.
So I knew kind of where I came from, but I didn't have... I always thought it was like a jigsaw. Like mine was like
Something didn't match.
Yes, didn't match, didn't make up, and also where are these other pieces? Like, how will I ever find them?
Yeah, of course.
So
then...
identity for me growing up, was a big thing. Obviously had to, lie about it in school maybe, because I didn't know. So it was almost like the shame and embarrassment that I had about not knowing who I was when everyone else knew where they came from.
Because I remember when I met you, so we were adults, young adults. And I remember, meeting your parents, your adopted parents, who are absolute legends, by the way, shout out to them. I remember as well asking questions and saying, but you're mixed race. And then you explained, this can happen sometimes, because it's not necessarily fair for you to always want to tell everyone that you're adopted when you first meet them. You don't need to.
Sure.
But I remember you saying that it can happen, that it can skip a generation. That's why I'm different. And of course, I'm just like, oh yeah, cool. Like, just fascinated.
Yeah.
But I guess that inside, every time that someone asks, you're like, yeah, but did it skip a generation? What is the actual truth here?
Yeah, and I think, of course, there are twins that have been born to a black couple, and one is Caucasian and one is black. So, of course, all these things do happen in the world. But I think for me, the shame was surrounded by the unknown. And
with the information you had, this was what it was.
Yeah.
But it didn't really add up.
Yeah, so it wasn't the truth. So then people question something and I don't know the truth about myself.
And neither do your adopted parents. Yeah, they know what as much as they're telling you.
I just felt embarrassed that I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
But I was too young to process it like that.
Yeah, of course.
So then, when I got to 18, I went back to the Adoption Society because I was then legal to, and they helped me find my biological mother. So I met her, and I had pictures of her, so I knew what she looked like. And we sat down, we had a chat. I kind of asked about my father a bit, and she skirted around it a lot, you know. So I kind of picked up it was a painful experience for her.
Yeah, touchy subject.
All the adoption papers kind of said that he was, not a very nice man, controlling. So I had this kind of vendetta growing up, like, well, do you know what? When I'm old enough, I'm going to find him, I'm going to go to his house, and I'm going to knock on his door, I'm going to mess up his life. Because he messed up my mother's life, and he messed, so all the growing up I had was like, Batman and Robin, like,
I'm Robin, you're Batman.
And I had this idea that when I was old enough, I would find him somehow, because he wanted to get rid of me.
Yeah, what's the problem?
Family, he apparently had all these kids to all these different women. So I was going to go and expose the truth, this dramatic...
Yeah. One thing that I remember from you telling me this story, because obviously I've known it in chunks at different stages of your life, I just remember that on the birth certificate, he's a disc jockey. And that was one thing that your biological mum was like, he's definitely a disc jockey, he's definitely black, he's definitely a disc jockey.
Yeah,
you were like, all
right.
These
3 facts that she clung onto, like, he's called Paul, he's a DJ, he's not very nice. That was all that I had.
Yeah.
I was like,
God.
How am I going to find someone called Paul who's a DJ?
He's not very nice.
He's not very nice. Like, I can't put an ad in the Yellow Pages. I can't do a Google search.
This is where little investigator Cjay comes to the surface.
Yeah, so I kind of resided to the fact of, do you know what, I'm never going to find that half of my jigsaw. I just need to deal with it. I need to accept it because there's no way. And then, of course, technology evolved, and then the Ancestry DNA kits came out.
Yes.
And our friend Tom, had bought me an Ancestry DNA kit mainly to find out my ethnicity.
Yes.
Because obviously we talked about it, and I was like, I don't think I am, 100% black. Lots of other ethnicities in me, and definitely Caucasian ethnicities.
Yeah.
So I did this, and it came back that I was kind of 50% Jamaica, Congo, Cameroon, and 50% Manchester, Wigan.
I think it was something like 49% white, and 51% black.
Yeah.
And we were like,
So something...
There's a glitch in the matrix here.
Yeah. But then what do you do with that information?
And so then it's unfortunately that proves that your biological mum is wrong. Not necessarily that she's lied, but the fatherhood aspect is not correct.
Not correct. Yeah, exactly. And a few months later, I then received a message from a woman whose DNA had matched to mine very strongly. Yeah.
Didn't you, when you found out this ancestral DNA test result, you did go back to your mum, didn't you? And you said, look, I've got this test. It's telling me that I'm half white.
So that was after. So this was...
Okay.
Yeah, so Susan had messaged me and she said she was piecing together her family tree.
Yes.
Can I help her? Because obviously we're very closely matched in DNA, she can't figure out where. Kind of explained my situation and said, look, my mother's side
not sure.
kind of this. If it's my father's side, I have no idea, but this is how old I am. This is how old he would maybe be. And then she responded like, okay, well, maybe we're not related. It must be an accident because there's only one male that age and he doesn't have another kid.
Ooh.
Then there was a family barbecue at the weekend and she got very drunk and started to tell this story to her nephew in third person as if it was someone else, you know?
Yeah.
And then the penny dropped for him and he kind of clocked maybe she was talking about him.
Yeah.
So then he got really emotional because he was confused. He didn't know anything about this.
Thinking he's got a child.
Yes. And then at the barbecue, everyone sees him crying. So then people start, why is Jamie crying now?
Yeah.
Then it kind of comes out. Then his daughters start crying. Then his wife is like, well, how old is this boy? When did this happen? Was it at the same time as me? Like, what the hell? So it really was like a bomb for the whole family in one go.
And you didn't know about this, right?
I didn't know this was happening,
at the family barbecue on a Sunday.
On a Sunday in Manchester, yeah, as you do.
Meanwhile, we're Googling face. CJ and I are in separate places of living, like in London, and I just remember being on my laptop late at night, like, we're gonna find him.
And we were like...
Facebook searching. Yeah, we were stalking the lady that got in touch with you, and then we were stalking her family, and then the sons and the daughters.
Trying to find someone who could be.
Yeah. So
and then she emailed me and said, I think I know who your father is, but we need to speak to your mother. And at that point, I was like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to give anyone the opportunity to lie to me or make something up or misconstrue something, anymore. I want to hear from the horse's mouth.
Who am I?
His side of the story.
Yeah.
Then they can go and speak or whatever. But right now, like, I want the answers first.
Yeah, good for you.
I feel I'm owed that.
100%, yeah.
So then I got in contact with him via email. We spoke a bit, and then we met in a steakhouse.
So just before, I'm just going to interject with my little part of the story. So when you had his name, and
yes,
you sent me his Facebook profile.
Yes.
And oh my God, it was a white man like Peter Cjay with your face on it. And we were like, oh my God, we were 100%. There was no doubt in my mind. I was like, that's your dad?
Yeah.
What the hell? For how many years? I think we must have been in our early 20s. It was like all those years of thinking that you had a black dad.
Yeah.
Here he was with your face on a white man, a lovely, happy, smiley white man.
Yeah.
And we were like, bloody hell.
Yeah.
We've done it. I mean, you did most of the work, but I was...
It was like, do you think
tapping
this
away.
looks like me? And you're like, oh my God.
It's your dad. So then
we said, okay, let's meet up. So I met up with him in a steakhouse in Manchester. We had steak and red wine. We sat opposite each other. We sat down and he said, tell me what's going on. And I said, no, you tell me everything that you know and then I'll tell you what I know.
Ooh.
And he told me the whole story, who he thought my mum was, everything like that, how they knew each other, how his ex-girlfriend came back to him and said she was pregnant again.
Yeah.
So he did the right thing, or thought he was doing the right thing by going back to her to make it work because they were going to now have 2 kids together. But at the same time, I was in my mother's stomach.
And he didn't
know. So she didn't tell him. She just left.
Yeah.
So my sister and I were both kind of in the oven at the same time.
Crazy.
With 2 different women. And he had no idea. And that was it.
So how amazing to get back in touch with your biological dad after all those years, get some answers, and you realise that he didn't know. It wasn't that he abandoned you out of choice or anything like that. He genuinely didn't know.
Well, yeah, he wasn't this nasty man.
No.
The disc jockey.
The disc jockey. Was he ever a disc jockey?
He was never a disc jockey.
Oh, damn it. But that must have been so healing for you to actually know, okay, he didn't even know about me, but then also there must have been some emotions of anger towards your biological mum who hasn't been telling the truth or
well, I was kind of
didn't know.
like more confused And like, okay, she must have, you know, trying to see the best in people. Everyone does something for a reason. Like even villains in films don't think they're bad. They think they're doing the good things.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, not that she's a villain, but she was doing what was right for her at the time. Whether she should have told my dad or not, you know, what was going on with her, that didn't allow her to speak the truth.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, I do know now, you know, her parents were quite strict and she was very young. So if they'd known that she'd slept with a Caucasian man, there could have been issues there.
Totally.
So she lied about that. And obviously if I came out and I was light-skinned, you'd see instantly. So that's another reason. Obviously my father couldn't be with her because he'd gone back to his ex-girlfriend. So then she would have been a single mother. Her parents would have hated her.
Yeah.
So all these things are going on, which is why she panicked. And
it's never black and white.
It's never black and
Pardon
white.
the pun.
MJ.
Stop it. But no, honestly, like, you know, everyone's situation is different, and I think you have to give grace for people doing the best that they can at the time with the information and the lifestyle that they have.
Absolutely. And, you know, the choices I made and my perspective on life when I was 18, 19, 20 is very, very different from where it is now. Look at it as a, you know, I found my dad when I was 30, so that's, I was looking at it as a 30-year-old.
Yes.
But if I was an 18, 19-year-old, how would I have looked at that situation?
So maybe even, like, it's better that you met him and discovered this later on.
Yeah.
With less, you know, resentment and having done more on your healing journey.
Yeah.
So fascinating. So tell us the situation now. Like, I know a bit about this, but...
The situation now is I have a great relationship with him.
Yeah.
And spending time with him, I can see it. And my sisters, his wife, they've made a comment on it. My partner's made a comment on it. But the similarities between me and him, so many things now make sense. Like my stupid behaviour, my immaturity.
Give yourself some credit.
My good looks.
Your funny side.
My funny side comes from him.
Yeah.
And we have, you know, the things that he texts me now, me texting myself when I was like 18, you know, he's like, it's crazy.
Well, that's just a whole nother topic in itself, isn't it? Like the nature nurture, because genetically you've got those similarities with each other that are affecting like personality traits. That's so fascinating.
Yeah, you can, and that was...
And you've not been in each other's lives for like 30 years,
So that really made me see it kind of secured my beliefs that things are nature, predominantly nature.
Yeah.
Because my identity was then, I can physically see the same facial expression.
Actually is the same face.
Jokes, the same humour, the same addictions, and so much of him is in me. And
now your puzzle piece is starting to connect and make more sense.
Yeah.
Once having met, you know, part of creation of who created you. Like that is so important. I guess for everyone to know, like, that side of their life is important. And I've heard things, you know, that people end up traveling a lot or searching for like missing parts of themselves that they're looking for. So like, it must have been so nice that you have that relationship with him now. Yeah. And that side of the family, like your sisters, your cousins.
Yes, I've got like a big family now. I'm close to them all.
Yeah.
And they're all so different as well. My 4 sisters are so different from each other.
Yeah.
But also kind of like, I mean, they're half sisters, but part of me. It's really interesting to see similarities and differences between them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I guess most people, not that you don't take for granted necessarily where you come from, but you know your parents, that's kind of normal.
Yeah.
Some people don't, if they're adopted or they go into care, pass away, then you don't have those opportunities. So it was amazing to be given that when I thought I would never have that.
You kind of found an extra parent.
Yeah.
And out of interest, for the listeners, how did that affect your relationship with your adopted amazing mum and dad?
I mean, it just made me... It's very interesting because obviously now, you know, I'm not saying my mum is the bad guy, but I have kind of my biological parents. One is kind of like great relationship, very positive. The other one is now doesn't exist anymore. So I've kind of got this kind of dysfunction with my biological parents, but then I have amazing adoptive parents. So it makes me appreciate everything they've given to me.
Totally.
Everything that they are. And obviously so much of them is in me through nurture.
Yeah, of course.
So I have their nurture, but my father and mother's nature.
Yeah. And were they fully supportive in you on your journey, discovering all of this? Were there some difficult times?
I think they were fully supportive. They weren't really involved in the process.
Yeah, fair.
And they were obviously worried for me in case, because they obviously had the same narrative that Paul the DJ is a bad guy.
Yeah, the disc jockey.
The disc jockey. The evil disc jockey.
Paul.
Is that so they had concerns regarding that.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
But obviously that wasn't the case, and they kind of left me to it. They were always there to support me if I needed anything. When they told me that I was adopted, which is, I must have been like 1.
Yeah.
They've always said, and when you're 18...
Wow, that's so powerful.
If you want to find, you can, whenever you're ready, go find them.
I love that.
Been a...
That's so good. Hello, so I'm going to have to interject a little bit here, as I have had to re-record part of the podcast. And I wanted to re-record it so that the person in the story remains anonymous. But I actually did have a similar situation in regarding a close family member in my immediate family. I grew up and one day I pieced together some information, detective tabs, of course, and I pieced together some information that someone in the family was not linked to me biologically because some of the dates didn't add up. And we had all been discussing on holiday when certain people in the family met, fell in love, etc. And yeah, the dates just didn't add up, and I managed to work it all out. And it became a real shock to me. It became a real shock to me, and I did completely overreact. And I felt deceived because it had been hidden. And I think because I had worked it out naturally, that's where the deception came in. But I spoke to the family member that it involved, and they explained to me that it didn't matter to them at all, and that there was no part of them that ever wanted to track down their real biological parent because they didn't feel that they needed to. They didn't feel that they needed that closure. They didn't feel that they needed that information. And they were more than grateful for the person that had taken up that role in their life, blood related or not. The parent role had been filled completely by that person in all of their actions and in all of the ways that they had helped to raise this child in the family. So I really did take that on board. But of course, being me, I was super curious and I wanted to know more. And I managed to actually track down this person, this missing family member. I actually managed to track them down on Facebook, classic, the old Facebook stalk again. And I reached out to them and I was blocked and deleted, which was obviously not something I was necessarily expecting. But at the same time, it also showed me that it doesn't matter because I have had this person in my life as a role, even if they're not biologically related to me. They have played a tremendous, amazing part in my life. And it made me just see the bigger picture, beyond the deception, beyond the secretiveness of it all. And although this person still wants to remain anonymous on the podcast, which is totally within their right, it does show that we do still have a long way to go with all of this stuff and that it shouldn't matter. It should all be spoken about and it should all be out in the open because everyone deserves to know who they are and where they're from. So whilst respecting this member of my family, I do want to make it clear that things from that generation are they're still not as open about these things and they're still not as ready to move forward and embrace these parts of ourselves that we need to delve into and discover who we are and what makes us who we are. And like we discussed on the podcast, is it nature or is it nurture or is it an element of both? So I'll let you continue to listen to the podcast now, but I just wanted to share that side of my story and hopefully it will resonate. Me and my brother do keep trying to bring it up and try and find out those answers for ourselves.
Yeah, because it means something to you.
It means something to us.
There's another piece of your puzzle.
Exactly.
Somewhere, even if you don't engage with it, to know some information. Yeah,
just to have that depth, isn't it? It's a bit of closure, I guess.
Yeah.
And it's being comfortable with maybe the not knowing. I'm very bad at that.
But I guess it depends on the curiosity of the person as well, because of my race meant more to me than it did my sister.
Totally, yeah.
Because my sister looks like she could be my parents' biological daughter.
Yes.
Whereas I don't look like, there's questions around it. So for me, it meant more. So for me, it was like, I have to find out who I am. And me having to face questions from outside. Obviously, my extended family, my uncles, my aunties, my granddad, all of them were black. My granddad's 90th birthday, there's a picture in Ghana of everyone. There's like 80 people, only mixed race boy there. Everyone else is black.
Yeah.
So, it looks...
It's really tough, but I guess you always had that knowing of that you were adopted.
Wow.
So that was kind of the end of it for me. But I also feel that there's a missing puzzle piece, that something's gone down, because if it was this friendly, open chat, everyone knows. But then again, having empathy, you don't know what's going on in his life. Maybe all of his family don't know. Maybe it's more of that than actually...
It's traumatic for him because...
It's skeletons buried in the closet for years
and
now.
People think, obviously, humans do things, cover them up and move on and try and forget about them.
Oh, exactly.
Because they're surrounded in shame and trauma and all these things. I mean,
especially that generation.
Let's be open, let's deal with it, let's cry through it, let's whatever. Because we want to kind of grow.
Yeah, exactly.
But obviously some people are just happy not knowing, but that kills me.
Yeah,
like
same.
In Romeo and Juliet.
Don't.
When Romeo has no idea that she's taken the sleeping...
Yeah.
He thinks she's dead, but she's taken... I'm like, if only you knew the truth, you wouldn't have killed yourself. Like, it's such a tragedy.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a tragedy when people don't know the truth.
100%. I am a truth seeker. In life, with everything, I want to know the ins and outs.
And I think everyone deserves that, but not everyone can handle dealing with that trauma.
So then it becomes an issue of not an issue, that's the wrong word, but, I want to respect and leave them be. I don't want to keep digging all of this up for them if it's not what they choose to do. If I choose to dig it up, for me, fine, but I kind of need them to help me. So it's a really hard one, but I have actually made peace with it. But it was just that's kind of a similar version, but a different version where it didn't work out with all of this open knowledge. What for you do you think was the hardest moment about discovering your dad or the truth?
I think the hardest pill to swallow was that my mother had lied.
Yeah.
And before, so when I met my father and he told me everything, I went to my mother, I texted her and I said, look, I know the truth. He's this man. You worked for him. You had a relationship.
Yeah, wow. All this information.
Yeah, and almost to say it's okay. I've figured it out now. It's fine that you didn't tell me, but I know the truth now, so maybe we can talk about it.
Let's have a chat.
Yeah. And she just replied darling, sleep with a white man. No, not me. And then blocked me.
Oh, God,
and that was the last I ever heard from
last
her.
Interaction.
Yeah.
But as we know, that is... projection. It's painful for her.
Yes.
And that is her way of letting you know, this is touchy for me, don't go there.
Yeah.
And that's her only way she knew how, I guess.
Yeah. So and obviously for me, it's like, oh my God, happy days. I've found a resolution. I've completed this puzzle. I've fixed this. But for her, it's like, danger, alarm bells off, bring up this trauma and all this stuff.
100%.
But she's probably not even conscious that that's happening. She just has these feelings of, get away from me.
Yeah, I'm triggered.
This is trouble. I don't want to speak to you. And
I need to keep myself safe.
Yeah. And I'm like, how can you do that? Because if I had a child, I would never do that. I would want to be honest with them. I want to show them, humans make mistakes. Everybody messes up.
Yeah.
And we have to accept each other's mess.
Yeah.
Understand each other. So I'm willing to do that with her. But she's not prepared to. And then what's funny is when I Facebooked her, I can obviously see her sister on Facebook, who is my auntie, and we talk on Facebook, even though my mother has blocked me.
Good old Facebook.
It's good old Facebook.
But I know, isn't it bizarre?
Yeah.
It's really strange. But, so that was the hardest, probably the
hardest
moment.
That was the hardest thing, and I think that's the thing maybe now that in therapy I want to deal with. It's like, I'm talking about it and I'm fine, but your mother...
It's your mum at the end of the day.
Giving you up and now 30 years later still lying to you. What has that actually done to me? How does baby Chris feel about that?
Yeah.
Because adult Chris, I feel fine about it. Baby Chris hasn't really had a chance to have a voice and speak. So I want to give him the opportunity and be like, right, let's deal with this now, because you're probably not going to change it. am I going to get a letter or something one day when she's on her deathbed and has written something to me? I don't know if that's going to happen. Or before then, hopefully.
Yeah.
But none of it could happen, most likely. Then I have to like mourn the loss of this woman who you
have to accept it again without closure, and that's so difficult. Maybe we do another podcast on that, like how to accept things without closure, because that is something, breakups and like family dramas and getting rejected from jobs, like that is so hard, isn't it?
Yeah, even like being ghosted and stuff.
Oh my God.
Is a form of no closure.
I know.
And we see it as the norm now because it's just what you do. Dating apps, you swipe, chat for a bit, ignore them, and it's just gone. You know, back in the day.
I was the queen of getting ghosted, wasn't I?
But in the 80s and the 90s, ghosted wasn't really a thing.
No,
you communicated with people differently. Yeah. But now, you're picked up and dropped so easily through a phone, not even like a human interaction. But what is that doing to you?
Totally.
Mentally or as a human, what is being ghosted constantly? The dating world, everyone knows it's so hard.
But even like, let's go back to good old Facebook. That, you know, our parents' generation didn't have that. No. So they probably thought all of this stuff will never come out, blah, blah, blah. Exactly. We're living our happy life. There's little old me that works out, wait a minute, you met at 21? And then we've got Facebook to track it down and talk with people. It's like probably pushing them out of their comfort zone because they're not ready for that information to be out. They've not processed it. And we're like, tell us everything. We want to know.
Even if it's messy and it's, you know... I'm not proud of the fact that I couldn't admit that I slept with a Caucasian man and I had a relationship with him and I had to give you up because I couldn't afford you. You know, there probably is a lot of shame around that, but I don't know. I think it's...
But I think for us, right, we've been doing this healing work, therapy, self-development, and it's admitting that you are a flawed human. Yeah. People cannot do that. Yeah. People cannot admit that they're a flawed human. And I messed up. I'm sorry, I lied. Like, let's talk about it. The truth's out. People can't admit that. It's really hard. Whereas I think the only way to push through in the self-development healing world is, firstly, you got to admit where you're flawed, accept those flaws and work through them.
Well, because everyone is flawed.
Everyone.
And also, if you're going to be in a relationship with someone, they have to accept your
flaws. They have to love the flaws that you have.
You have to know you have to accept them first.
Yes, totally.
Otherwise...
God, it's so complex. No, exactly that. Another question, out of all of this, what was the funniest thing that happened, or a funny story?
To do with this?
Yeah. Actually, what about, I don't know why she's just popped into my head, but your biological dad's mum, your grandma.
Yes.
I don't know why she's making me laugh. I've actually never met her, but just the way you've described her.
My grandma, well, she's not called grandma, she's called Di.
Okay,
She's
Di.
never been grandma.
No.
Because when I first met her, I went,
grandma!
God, I've never had a grandma.
And she's like ill.
Yeah, I had this like gorgeous vision of like, I was Luke from the Witches and I had this grandma who would take me for tea and scones. No, she's a cool, hip woman. She has a yoga studio in her back garden.
Legend.
And a clothing workshop in her basement. Mm-hmm. So she makes her own clothes and she's got a yoga sling upstairs. And she's fit as a fiddle and she makes all her food, like she grows it and makes it. And she's, an incredible woman. Mm. So, to meet her, that was beautiful. Was that another piece of the puzzle? Because I guess you are quite into some of that holistic stuff. Yeah. And I look at her and I'm like, her house, she's got like a 4-story house in Manchester. Her husband, my granddad, had, and he passed away after I was born. Yeah. But before I could meet him. But seeing the way that she is, I'm like, oh my God, yes, I really love the way that you live and your values, and they're definitely in me. Yeah. She's really cool. Obviously, I'm gonna like that. Yeah. A cool grandma. Good grandma. Opening so many pieces to your life, like just new people to meet, new people to discover. Like it's so cool. And for you, oh God, this is a hard one. We've probably already discussed it, but out of this whole section of your life so far to date, what was the biggest light bulb moment for you in all of this?
difficult one.
Difficult. I think maybe the biggest kind of, even though that identity was such a huge thing for me, and it felt like a piece of me was missing. A piece of me was really never missing because I already had everything I ever needed.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah.
So meeting my dad wasn't me completing myself. It was an addition to my already jigsaw.
I love that so much.
Yeah.
Oh, that's definitely such a good way to round up this chat, because, you know, it's like you had a beautiful upbringing with two amazing parents who adopted you, who gave you everything you ever needed and all the love and all the guidance. And this was just confirmation and adding to that, which you already had. That's a beautiful way to finish it.
Yeah, I never needed to be sad that half of me was missing, because it wasn't.
Yeah.
Everything was there and it was perfect.
You already have everything.
I already had,
I love that.
A beautiful family, and I never questioned that. But actually finding my dad didn't make me feel complete. It just made me feel like I had more.
Yes, totally. Oh, you know what? Thank you so much for sharing all of that, because I know it's some quite personal information there, and I think it's really going to help people. That there's a lot more people that are adopted than we know.
Yeah.
So I can't remember the statistic, but someone said it to me yesterday, actually, that, you know, so many children might not even be aware that they're not with the biological dad.
Parents or heart,
yeah. And it's a really, I think we're all on this soul searching mission at the end of the day, aren't we? And it's very important, nature, nurture. So yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate you.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Thanks for listening, and we will be back with more Facebook stalking updates in the future. Ciao. If you want to see more of what I'm up to, please give me a follow on Instagram @TabithaCamden. Thank you so much for listening today. I super enjoyed recording these podcasts. And if you've enjoyed listening, please hit that follow or like or subscribe button for Tab Talk podcasts.